Welcome to Zoo Nation, where we talk about history as it unfolds and discuss the political zoo of a nation that we're living in. My name is Josh.
I'm Nathan.
We're here to talk to you about some big stories. Mitch McConnell freezes up in the middle of a sentence. And
It was longer than that.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot longer than that. A vaccine developer suddenly dropped dead. And YouTube, if you want to censor this, go ahead. We're going to be on Rumble and Odyssey. We're going to talk about 2024. Got some big things to talk about 2024 regarding the candidates running, but also the debates. We want to go into that. And I think it's good to announce at the outset that typically we do this every 2 weeks. We're going to cut ourselves an exception, and that we're going to do this in 3 weeks because that'll be right after the first Republican debate, which is August the 23rd. So we'll be sitting down to record the day after, and then the episode will come out the following Saturday. So the 27th or whatever that is. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. Comment here and tell us what you want us to discuss whenever we make that episode. There's going to be, and for sure, we're going to have posts on our social media. Follow us at zoo_nation_ on Instagram, Zoo Nation on Facebook, Zoo Nation 1776 on Twitter. For sure, follow us out there. And Zoo Nation 1776 on Telegram as well, t.me/Zoo Nation. So for sure, follow us there. There's ways of giving us questions so that we can go over that whenever the debates do take place. We want to talk about what your questions are, your insights. We want to react to that. So we want to talk about the political debates that are happening on the Republican side. It's an important issue. So to begin, you've seen the video, I've seen the video of Mitch McConnell. And I will say he was in the middle of speaking and he's just ended it with an and stood there for a total of 20 seconds until finally, toward the end of that, people started saying, "Mitch, you want to go back to your office?" Yeah. And he turned and started walking back to his office, and they walked off. So I guess the question is, from the comments, people were all speculating mini stroke.
I mean, potentially, yeah.
And it meets the criteria that I've heard of.
Yeah.
It's very unusual for that to happen and it not be a stroke of some kind. I'd be hard pressed to think of what else, because a seizure, that would look different. So he wouldn't just stop speaking. He would actually fall. Yeah. He would grab his arm or his chest or his head or something like that. Most likely.
There is, and because I've had seizures before.
That's true. You're a seizure expert.
Yeah. Not an expert, but at least I've experienced. But before I had the grand mal seizures, which with the shaking and everything, I had seizures where just went blank.
Okay.
Like I would be talking to you for a second and then all of a sudden, now for me, I would lose my vision and everything, so I knew something was going on before I blanked out and everything. So I don't know if that could have potentially been happening to them. So it could have been a petite seizure is what they call it.
That's right.
So there is a potential it could have been a petite seizure or again, almost said coma, but I mean a stroke. There we go.
Yeah.
A stroke. Yeah, it probably was a stroke or petite seizure, something like that.
Petite seizure, at least I know that this is one of the symptoms. I don't know if it's the same thing as a petite seizure. Mm-hmm. I think it used to be called catatonic.
Yeah, I think
where
so, yeah.
you would, like you just said, kind of similar to that. There's actually someone that a family member of mine has worked with that one time. Actually, it was very similar behavior. I'm glad it popped into my head of what happened to Mitch.
Right. Mm-hmm.
She was in the middle of talking and she stopped. Yeah. And they thought, they were kind of joking around and like waving their hand in front of her face and saying, "Are you okay? What's going on?" They were kind of laughing about it. And she came out of it and was like, "Yeah, sometimes I get these little seizures and I can't, I hear everything you're saying to me, but I can't speak."
Yeah.
And it's not like they come out of it and they don't know what's going on. Yeah. They do. It's just that she can't speak.
They can't do anything.
She loses her ability to speak all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. And so that could be it too. It could be catatonic. It could be a mini stroke.
Yeah.
We're not sure. Now, I will say what's interesting is it happened one of two ways. Either it happened and it was ignored, like I never heard a medical update of, the doctors have looked at Mitch McConnell and it was this. None of that. And Twitter responded one of two ways. What was funny about it was the Democrats responded and said, "Oh, Republicans, you make fun of Maxine Waters and Dianne Feinstein and Joe Biden, but you're not making fun of Mitch McConnell." You know what the Republicans are doing? Making fun of Mitch McConnell. It's ridiculous. It was a ridiculous political position to hold because Republicans are saying this guy's older in dirt.
Yep.
What is he doing still in office? What's going on? Is he okay?
Yeah.
We're hearing no updates on his health.
Yeah.
So it was a completely ridiculous position. They're ascribing position to the right that they don't hold. At least the people on the right that you and I represent.
Yep.
Now, some people that are extremely establishment are going to say, oh, you know, he just needed a nap, and it's like that. Hardly anyone's going to do. That's 1% of the Republican Party.
Possible.
You know, maybe he does, but that's a disqualifier. If you literally can't do your job, then that's a disqualifier.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, I mean,
Agreed.
think about it. If you were working a job, doing what you do, and all of a sudden you fall asleep on the job, your boss is going to tell you to go home. You know. So
and might not come back.
yeah, depending on what happens.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was a weird thing that I saw. Was like, oh, Republicans are silent on this. It's like, no, they're not.
Yeah,
they're making we're all sending it to each other and saying, what the heck? What's going on with this? So anyway, that was a big thing that I saw. And there, again, we're not hearing any medical updates. And see, one thing that did come about that was a good result was some people that were either left or right, because you can't tell, were tweeting out some of the ages of the oldest members of Congress and saying this is why we need an age or a term limit. And that I do agree with.
Yeah.
We need one or the other. Now, I would probably argue term limits because I think it's good for all parties involved. Age limits is one thing. I think there's probably
especially in the House.
Yeah.
And, what's the age that you can be? Because I know if in the House you can be 25.
Yeah.
So I don't want somebody that is terrible in the House, you know, like AOC in the House for till she's 60, if that was the limit, you know. So yeah, I'd prefer the term limit over age, just because I could see something. You know, with the well, I'm not there yet. It's like, yeah, okay. So,
right, you could be in for 40 years before you're finally too old to serve.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are people, say what you will about Bernie Sanders, that are mentally there. I mean, Chuck Grassley is 89. Yeah, and Chuck Grassley has it. He's okay. Ron Paul is another good example. Yeah, perfectly fine and very, very old. And Dick Van Dyke is very much on the left. But he's bright too. Yeah. He's still got it. And some people just age differently for whatever reason. And so for that reason, I don't know if an age limit is the right call. I think more cognitive tests is probably good, A. And B.
But who determines those cognitive tests would be the thing.
Sure, and I get that. There's potential for it to go wrong, but the status quo of none at all, when you've got Dianne Feinstein literally not knowing that she took a vote, there's got to be something done.
I'm told just say yay. Just say
yay. And then, apparently there was a recording recently of that, and she went into a big rant. Yeah. She didn't even say yay or nay. Yeah, she just did, and it was like, that's not right. And then again, to the aforementioned, she was told, well, you were absent this day, and she's like, no, I wasn't. I came in and I voted. And they're like, no, ma'am, you did not. And she tried to argue and say I was here. She's talking out of her head. Now she's on the left, so she's been talking out of her head her entire life. But at the same time, now it's
even worse.
Yeah, it's worse somehow.
now age is a factor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Before it wasn't, now it is. She's sounding deluded even for a leftist, which is saying something. So yeah, that's the situation we got there. So the status quo is unsustainable. There needs to be something done on that issue. Anything else you wish to add about Mitch McConnell? I'll just say there needs to be younger and just all around better Republican leadership. And Mitch McConnell is not the face of the Republican Party. Oh, no. I mean, he is because he's been in there a long, long time, and he's been, the Senate. Yeah, right. Mitch McConnell has been the Senate Majority Leader almost every time. And honestly, you mentioned Graham. It's funny. That probably will be the de facto next leader, unless he gets replaced. Which he
can't lead though. He's gonna find somebody else to.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe.
Which actually that might be a good thing, because if he can't lead, which I don't think he can, who's he like? That might be a good thing, because then that means that the Republican Party finds another just another leader, and could potentially be better.
Hopefully,
at least it's not Mitch McConnell or anything like that. Sure. So, but the one thing that I do want to say is, that and I've said this about Joe Biden, and I've said this about Fetterman, is I do feel bad for him, as far as one that I don't know if the Republicans are using or are gonna, if I'm there, I hope that the Republicans urge him to leave office because of his health. I hope that the Republicans do not play the Democratic game and say, no, just stay in because we need this seat. Look, I understand that the seat's important, but honestly, you should have a candidate lined up for that seat. You know, it should not have to be, well, we need this seat so bad that we have to take the deathly ill person or just the potentially very ill person, you know. So, again, I hope that they urge McConnell to step down or take a leave, something. You know, just show that, hey, we're a little better than than the Democrats of, you know, we care about his health. So again, just like with Fetterman and just like with Joe Biden, feel bad for him as far as health wise goes.
Sure.
But something's gotta happen. Like, you step down, take some time for your health, something. Because right now, that's not what we need leading the country.
And a lot of this comes down to the voting populace. Ultimately, it's going to come up to the voters around election time. Will they vote for McConnell in the primary?
Yes.
Or will they say, never again? Same with Fetterman. Will they say, you know what, someone needs to primary this guy, he's incapable of serving? Now, will they run somebody? Probably not, but should they? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That's what a responsible populace would do, is say this person, like, positions...
That's not what the R stands for.
Right. Political positions or not, you know, this person is physically incapable. And that goes for Biden, that goes for Fetterman, that goes for McConnell in this situation. You know, political positions are one thing, but actually, like, physical health that may fail suddenly is an actual threat.
Yeah.
Because what happens then? So yeah, that's, speaking of people's physical threats, physical health, I should say, suddenly failing. Dr. Alfredo Victoria died suddenly at age 42. He was a vaccination expert.
Wasn't laughing at his death, by the way. Was laughing at his name, Alfredo.
Yeah. The world has been shocked by the sudden death of a renowned vaccination expert, Dr. Alfredo Victoria Moreno. Known to many from his regular appearances on Mexico Today, Dr. Alfredo was a passionate advocate of COVID mRNA vaccines. The 42-year-old public health specialist died in his sleep on Monday due to a myocardial infarction, according to reports. He was otherwise in excellent health, with no known pre-existing medical conditions. Dr. Alfredo's dedication to public health was evident through his various platforms. His energetic appearances on the TV show Mexico Today, where he administered coronavirus vaccines to staff members on air, were a testament to his unwavering commitment to the vaccine. He maintained a strong social media presence, encouraging his 440,000 Instagram followers to get vaccinated. His influence extended to TikTok, where his enlightening and relatable content amassed a large following. He also ran the websites provaccine.com, creating a hub for vaccine information. So this was this guy who was all about the vaccine, and he died suddenly. And, like, looking past possible divine judgment, it's most likely that he got a certain injection that we're all familiar with pretty recently, in the past few years, and he dies suddenly at the age of 42. And the question is, we all, and of myocarditis, you know, or a type of myocarditis, which is what we were being told for a long time by people like Robert Malone and people like that. Yep. Oh, wow, look out for this. This could be a real issue.
Yep.
And look, say what you will about RFK and his political positions, but at least he's pointed out a lot of these issues. So that's an important thing to think about. And, you know, I saw a tweet recently on Twitter saying, we don't regret taking it, and a lot of people are in that camp. They're like, no, we don't regret not taking it. I hope that the people that did take it have God's protection over them. I do. I don't wish anything bad to happen to them at all, but those of us who chose not to and managed to keep our job, I want to emphasize that, are glad that we didn't, because we look at sources like this or stories like this, and we think to ourselves, well, at least if I suddenly die, people are going to know it wasn't that. It was another problem, whether it was, you know, he had one too many, you know, beef jerkies or hamburgers or what have you, or, you know, whatever it is. They know it's not because he was forced to get a shot to keep his job. You know, or you know, to fly. I mean, there's all kinds of, for a long time, were all kinds of requirements. And I want to get into that as we get into 2024. It's an important thing to think about and talk about. So, things to add, and if not, we'll move on.
All right.
Anything else?
No, not really.
Cool.
Oh, actually, yes. Sorry. And then, also, just speaking of heart effects and stuff like that, LeBron James' son suffered a cardiac arrest, which is similar to DeMar Hamlin's from the Bills a few months ago. You know, it's weird how athletes and stuff who we know for a fact have gotten, the jab and everything. Yeah, it's just weird. Again, don't wish any of this stuff on them.
It's almost all heart related or myocarditis.
Exactly.
It'd be one thing if this guy randomly had a stroke at a young age, could be like, okay, this symptom is manifesting itself in different ways.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's almost all heart related, which is funny. Again, back to it. A lot of people are saying this is going to hurt people's hearts. It's going to hurt people and give people myocarditis. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, wow, these people knew what they were talking about whenever they warned us.
Science doesn't change. That's crazy.
Right. Well, and again, the people that claimed, we follow the science, and really it was an echo, not an argument, is the issue. No, you
follow the politics.
Right.
And the money.
Yes, exactly. So, if you're good, I say we get into 2024. We've got some things to get into. So, those of you who have been following the Trump indictments know that first he was indicted on a Stormy Daniels charge because he gave money and paid her for an NDA. Secondly, a charge relating to leaving with documents. So he left the White House with classified documents, and whether he did or whether he declassified them and left is the continued issue. And he's been indicted on that charge as well.
Yep.
And now we got one involving January 6th, specifically, did you incite a riot? How responsible are you for what happened with the invasion of the Capitol, the so-called insurrection? And I guess one thing that's an opening question that we didn't even cover in the prep is how likely do you think it is that he gets indicted on this charge with January 6th?
Very. I mean, it's the Democrats. I mean, it's gonna happen.
Sure.
It's happened with all the others, so why is it not gonna happen on this one?
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I don't see anything that says it's not gonna. Especially with this one, that's been the one that the Democrats have ran with like this entire time. So it's like you almost have to like indict them on this one if you're a Democrat. So, in other words, you just look stupid. Like it was a witch hunt. I mean, they're all witch hunts, but this one would make you specifically look like a witch hunt if you didn't do something about it. Sure. At least. So yeah, I think it's pretty much, no question that he gets indicted on it.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm with you. No, I think it's more likely than not. I would be pretty shocked if they go through all this trouble and innocent. I just don't see that happening.
No.
Now, I don't know at what point the next. I think a lot of people are waiting for the next legal shoe to drop. So you're being indicted. When will he actually be put in cuffs? When will there actually be a mugshot? And when will he actually be put in jail? And that's a tough one. I don't know. I think that probably the Democrats are seeing how much can we do before there's actually like some repercussions in some form or fashion. There's that. It's hard too when the guy's got a massive following, and especially on social media, Facebook especially, which he got back. He has a lot of followers. He has 3 or 4 million on True Social, but way more on Facebook. It's hard when you got a guy with a huge microphone who's consistently going on, especially things like Sean Hannity's show and giving his side of the story. It's hard taking that guy and putting him in jail and not feeling like, what's going to happen next? I mean,
unless he destroys his own base and also his toughest opponent actually does go ahead of him as far as in the polls and everything else. Then you can start making moves.
Sure. And maybe that's the ultimate power play is let the right kind of in a way destroy himself and or let Trump put his foot in his mouth enough.
Yep. Which he will eventually. I mean, he always does. I mean, he's done that in general before.
Well, and a question is, and then how does the left take advantage of that, basically?
Yeah, exactly.
Is the point. So, on that note, we got to talk about 2024. I don't really care about the particular order. We could go candidate by candidate. I guess we'll open things up with Pence. Pence has tweeted, this was literally today, that he said he was commenting on Trump's indictment. He said, basically he said, today's arrangement proves, and he said, anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. He issued a statement which was actually...
that's why that dude's been on CNN, too.
Yeah, exactly. He basically said he contested the election, and he also asked me to break the law. He said at one point, I've been asked before by the president that basically, would I choose Trump or would I choose the Constitution? I chose the Constitution, and I will look at, here we go. On January the 6th, former President Trump demanded that I choose between him and the Constitution. I choose the Constitution, and I always will. And that is Mike Pence talking. So this is the kind of the usual platitudes from Mike Pence on his Twitter account.
Which also, he is silently saying that I will not pardon Trump if any of this actually goes through.
Think about that. You're exactly right.
Which he's not going to get the elect. He's not going to get the vote.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right, because if he's saying, "Oh, there's something here," he's not dismissing it as a witch hunt like Vivek, for example, has done. He is saying, "Oh, there might be something here." You put yourself above the Constitution, which is what he's saying about Trump. Then you're right. He is implicitly saying, "I will not pardon him because there's. Why would I pardon him? But there's a reason why he's being indicted and arraigned."
Exactly.
So that's an important point. You're exactly right on that. So let's look. So to look at this, what I just read out loud. When you think about Pence, what he just said, do you think that hurts or helps him?
It hurts him, of course. Maybe it helps him with like independent / more independent leaning Democrats. But again, he's not going to get the vote. He knows he's not. I mean, he's got to know. Vivek has more of a chance to get it than he does, in my opinion. Nikki Haley has more of a chance. Tim Scott, who really didn't perform well, in my opinion, with Tucker and everything, has more of a shot. Anybody has more of a shot. He's just talking. I guess it really didn't hurt him, because, again, to what I just said, he's just talking. And he's not going to get it anyway. So, yeah, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. So did it hurt him? No. Did it help him? No. So it's just talk.
The way I see it is, it's interesting to me. This is weird because whenever he did what he did on January 6th, it's like, okay, who are you trying to please? Yeah. You're not going to please the Trump supporters. You're really not. It was a number that grew over time, but it was still a relatively high number of Trump supporters thought, okay, the election was stolen. Yep. So you're not pleasing them. It was probably only about 50 or 60% at the time, and it's grown. I will say it's grown. But even then, it was not a popular position to take, and he took it anyway and said, I will sign here, and I will allow the electors to go forth, and the election was not stolen. And he did that and said, I'm following the Constitution. So he's not pleasing the people that are more on the right. And the people on the left hate his guts. Why would you try to pander to them? Yeah. But he seemed to have. I don't know exactly who he was pandering to then. And now it's also, with this about Trump's indictments, who are you pandering to? You just nailed it on the head. He's not going to get the independent-leaning Democrats because they hate him on abortion, for example. Yeah. Probably hate him on the LGBT as well.
Probably on Christianity.
Yeah, all of that. They hate him on. So why would you try to get those people to smile and vote for you when there's really no chance of that happening?
And he sucked in Iowa. He actually got booed in Iowa. That never happens. Mm-hmm. So you're not getting anybody. And again, there's the term Iowa nice. Because they never boo anybody that they should. I believe he deserved the boo because all he said. Again, he's just talking. He's just, he thinks if he mentions God, especially in Iowa and stuff like that, or just in any of these, in any of these states that, lean heavily right, that mentioning God, that's at least going to get me some votes. It's like, no, because you actually have to back up things, and you also, especially with these heavy red-leaning states, you have to at least not necessarily back up Trump, but either stay away from it or say that, hey, the election was sketchy. At least.
Something.
Yeah. So you got to say something about it.
Irregularities is your best friend.
You can't do the Democratic talking point and say, Trump's the bad guy, this, and this. You have to play the politics in this case if you're running against
You got to at least do what Ilhan Omar said and said some people did something.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. That's what you got to do. Pence, again, he's just talking. I think Chris Christie might fare better than him. There is a chance that Chris Christie might fare better than him just because people hate him so much.
So it was interesting you say that. We didn't even talk about this in the prep. I saw a poll that I think it was in New Hampshire and probably other states as well, but definitely New Hampshire, Christie is gaining. And it's because this is what this person said. Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk made the point, and this I completely buy. It's actually better to look at polls state by state because that's how the election is conducted.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Versus nationally. Now, there's values to nationally.
Yeah.
But state by state, here's the thing. In 2016, the polls for nationally were really wrong. The polls per state, some of them were right and some of them were wrong. Certain states were wrong, like Michigan. They thought, oh, that's going to be solidly for Hillary Clinton, and it was not.
Oh, yeah.
So, but while we're on the topic of polls, I want to deviate from Pence, but I want to come back and then hit the other Republicans in a little bit. You brought up what I thought was a really good point in the prep for this was polls, their accuracy, versus, you just mentioned Tim Scott talking to Tucker Carlson, that event, the Blaze event that took place. I think it was called a Family Action Conference or just Family Conference. Mm-hmm. And he sat down with several people. He sat down with Pence. That became big news. He sat down with several people and asked them questions. And
he sat down with all the Republican candidates except for Trump.
Trump wasn't there. Correct.
And,
follow. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that event still brought in tons of views without the most, and yes, he is the most popular, not president. I mean, he is the most popular president too, but popular candidate. So without that's a problem for Trump. You're bringing in all these views and everything for this family leadership summit or something.
Sounds right.
Yeah, I think it's a family leadership summit, and you're bringing in all these views, televised and everything through the Blaze and stuff like that. Without your top dog, that should spell trouble for Trump, and that's a problem, at least for Trump. I don't think that's a problem for Pence or anybody else. But yeah, and that also shows that Republicans and people in general are paying attention to the Republican candidate, or like just Republican candidate, the choices in general.
Yes.
Because that shows that I think people really definitely want Biden out as well. It shows that Trump might not be the main pick, for one, and it also shows that people definitely want Biden out, and they want to know what the options are too, in case. And also, they might also just be looking at it for just a backup, just in case they decide to jump off the Trump train in general. And they might be looking at it just because I'm not going with Trump anyway, so I want to know what are my other options, and because I also definitely don't want Biden, so what are my options? So yeah, I mean, it's bad for Trump in my opinion, but it's good for the Republicans and the candidates there to get all those views and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say this is an important thing to consider. Some of the answers. One thing to recap: Haley was asked about Ukraine. Pence was asked about Ukraine. This was something that happened. There was a clip where Tucker Carlson.
Haley asked about Ukraine?
I'm sorry?
Was she asked about
briefly, and I don't remember her answer, but it wasn't good. So regarding Pence was on the seat. Tucker was talking to him, and Tucker asked him, "How come you're concerned about the number of tanks we send to Ukraine when there's people in America that are suffering?" And Pence began his answer with, "That's not my concern," followed by, "My concern is not Ukraine, it's the American people. I want to take care of them." And then he went on to say, "However, we can take care of our own while also being a leader on the stage, and we need to be a leader on the stage." Bunch of platitudes, basically pro-NATO and pro-leading the world.
It's not wrong, but you're not right.
Well, so he says that. Then Charlie Kirk cut the clip, and tweeted it out. Yeah. And it ended with him saying, "That's not my concern," and him basically hyping this up and saying Pence is saying that America is not his concern. And then what was funny was, I mean, I'm surprised that Pence knows enough how Twitter works. Yeah. Because he's old, but I mean, I guess Trump's older than him and he figures it out. So whatever. I mean, I do know for a fact Biden's not tweeting out anything.
Oh no,
he's probably never logged into Twitter.
No.
That's
not Biden.
Yeah, exactly. No. Exactly. Well, it's Obama. So so anyway, Pence retweeted it and said no, and he showed the entire clip, and it was like, okay, that's redeeming in a way, but it's not in a way, because you're still saying you're pro-NATO, pro so-called leading the world, but in this day and time where there's a war That's not the answer people want to hear. They want a non-interventionist foreign policy, at least on that war.
Yep.
So that was something that, again, here's the interesting thing is people hit the left for fake news and cutting things out of context, but we've seen it on the right, and that was an example of doing it on the right. Another one that I've mentioned on my show a good bit is when Obama was caught on kind of a hot mic, but again, it was cut out of context, where he was talking to someone and he was being asked, people are saying you're a Muslim, and he said, he was in his answer, in it, he said, but John McCain will mention my Muslim faith, and the guy goes, your Christian faith, and he goes, oh yeah, my Christian faith. Well, you watch the whole clip, he goes, my Christian, well, he says, yeah, but that's McCain saying I'm a Muslim, and that's not true.
Yeah.
So it was cut out of context where he said my Muslim faith, and all the Christian right, a lot of them, anyone went nuts and said, oh, he's confessing to being a Muslim.
Yeah.
Not true at all. Mm-hmm. He was explaining, this is what there was like a quote there. People are saying this, it's not true, but this is X, Y, and Z.
100%.
So the right can cut things out of context, and the left can cut things out of context. And this is just an example of that. That's my entire point.
And again, you cannot left the left.
Yes.
So don't do that.
Don't try. So back to the man we were just talking about, Pence. I agree with you. I don't think this helps him at all. It's interesting. What was funny was someone brought this up also, same guy, about the polls for Chris Christie. Is Chris Christie used to be a little bit of he was known as this New Jerseyan governor that would yell at people in press conferences. He was kind of a tough dude. Then he runs in 2016, and Trump was the absolute maverick, unstoppable, ran over everybody, and Christie actually looked really toned down next to him.
Yeah.
Plus, Christie ran to the middle. He tried to say, oh, you, Mr. Rand Paul, that cares about the Constitution, you're far out there. We need to have big government spying on American citizens. So that was unappealing to a lot of people, right? So he just, exactly. So he just gets downtrodden and had no way of recovering. His best moment was when he debated Marco Rubio, the interchange that they had. So it could be that when it comes to I think it's going to be kind of, in a way, three camps. This is the interesting thing. The narrative, I think, among Trump supporters is going to change. Because I follow a lot of hardcore Trumpers, but I also follow a decent amount now of DeSantis supporters. People that, at least, I say that with that mindset of they prefer him. They're not necessarily ride or die, but they prefer DeSantis. And this is the narrative. The narrative for a while, sorry?
Ben Shapiro.
Sure. The Daily Wire folks.
Daily Wires, and well, they were pretty much ride or die with him though right
now. DeSantis.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the narrative. The narrative was, it's Trump versus not Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I think we're seeing a redrawing here. For example, I don't think that many people that are supporting DeSantis now would vote for Chris Christie or the others. No. I think they would then, their next choice would be Trump. And I think there's some of the reverse where some Trump supporters' second choice will be DeSantis, but there's some that don't like DeSantis for a list of reasons, and we can get into some of what that is for a while. But I think, honestly, that's what the narrative is. I think the actual camp is Trump, DeSantis, and then none of the first two. Yeah. They're actually dividing a lot. And maybe it is that DeSantis is dipping out of that not Donald Trump category, maybe. But I do think DeSantis is pulling on a unique base in a way. One thing that we were talking about the jab earlier, and I told you I want to come back to this, is a big thing that DeSantis is really good on is COVID.
Yeah.
How he handled it, how he handled mandates, and he's not talking about it constantly on the campaign trail, but he is nevertheless talking about it. And I actually was thinking about this recently. It's funny because I don't think any of the other candidates, including Trump, they've all mentally moved on.
Yeah.
And it's actually refreshing, I will say, to have someone, and it's DeSantis, bringing this up and saying, hey, don't forget that for a while they were telling your kid to wear a mask in school. Yeah. Hey, don't forget that there was a time.
They'll do it again.
Right. And that's exactly right. That's his point, and a lot of his base, for lack of a better term. The people, again, that prefer him first, their point is, it may not be called COVID next time, but it may be called something else, and they will pull the same stunt again.
Well, there was a headline, and I don't remember where I read it, but there was a headline that said masks might have been environmentally friendly.
Sure.
So all they got to do is declare a climate crisis, boom, put back on your masks.
Right, because of carbon monoxide and dioxide and all that.
Just do something stupid.
Sure.
Which, in reality, you know how many of those masks I saw on the road that were definitely probably killing some animals and stuff like that? That birds checking them out and getting stuck in them, but then people would argue, no, they're making nests with them. It's still not good. When a bird builds things with builds a nest with things that are not, twigs and natural things, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. But, yeah, I don't know. Again, it's totally right. And you can't forget history.
Right.
Because if you forget history, and COVID's history, as far, like, it will be and everything. But, if you forget history and if you forget the past, it's doomed to repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
You can forget the past and everything, but you can't forget it, because if you forget it, there's a good chance that you're not going to watch out for signs of it repeating itself. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So I think that's a issue that a lot of the people that are really wanting DeSantis to win the primary and then the general is COVID.
Yeah.
There's others. For example, he was very good on critical race theory.
Disney.
And Disney. I was going to go there next. A
LGBT.
lot of all that. He was very good at that. And that's what a lot of his supporters, they seem to have in common. They care about that stuff a lot, and that's a good thing to care about.
And honestly, I think that Trump's kind of shifted to the middle on some of those things. And also, again, DeSantis has also kind of talked about pro-life as well, whereas Trump has kind of done the political answer, and which I call shifting to the middle. When you do the political answer on things like that and dance around it, that's shifting to the middle of like, I'm just gonna, he doesn't say, yeah, we're gonna fight more for life or anything like that, because again, just because we overturn Roe v. Wade, the fight for life is still not over.
Sure.
He just says, oh, we're gonna leave it up to the states, which again, that's not necessarily a wrong answer, but is that 100% the right answer? That's not saying, well, what more are you gonna fight for? Heartbeat bills? Are you gonna fight for, what more are you gonna do? Are you going to do better on endorsing people that are going to fight for at least heartbeat bills or something like that? So instead of just saying, we're going to leave it up to the states, we're done. But we shouldn't be on that case, at least with, again, it's not a wrong answer, but it's not 100% the right answer. It's the political answer as far as, that way you're not stepping on toes. I'm not looking for the guy, because that's not what Trump was. Trump was the guy, didn't care whose toes he stepped on. That's what Ron DeSantis is turning into. He's that guy that doesn't care what toes he steps on. He's going to say what he thinks is right, and that's what we need, in my opinion. And some of this stuff, I honestly think that's why Trump's not going to show up to these debates, because right now DeSantis, when you listen to him speak, he talks about what he's done. He talks about the record, right? The record could get Donald Trump in trouble, especially because Donald Trump then, a lot of it was good. Donald Trump COVID was not good, of course. Now, again, we can make excuses, hand side and whatnot, but either way, Donald Trump COVID was not good. And then Donald Trump now is kind of shifting on to an extent. Now, question of, is it too much? I don't know. That's for people to decide. But I think that could be a potential on why he's not going to show up to some of these debates. Is just, he claims, let him fight for who's going to be my VP, and it's like, I don't necessarily know that. I don't think that's what you're doing. I think there could be a chance that he's a little scared of DeSantis on what's going to pop up in those questions, because if you let DeSantis start talking about his record, then everybody else's record's going to come up. Like Pence will have to talk about his. Nikki Haley will have to talk about hers, et cetera, and then we get to you, Mr. Trump. And again, he's done a lot of great things, 100%. But again, when you get to the COVID issue, I think DeSantis wins on that issue.
Sure.
So, and that could be a big factor that makes Trump, especially because he does a lot of the double down stuff.
Sure.
Trump always does the double down for the most part. Well, actually, yeah, I'm gonna say not for the most part. He always does double down. He doesn't backtrack. So, and he'll double down on those wonderful vaccines. He'll double down on Project Warp Speed and everything else. Which, yeah. So, I don't know. Him not showing up in those debates, I think, could be one of the reasons. Could be because record. He could be worried that record comes up and. He doesn't want to destroy his base completely, as he's he's breaking his base. He's not destroying his base, but he has been breaking his base slowly just by some of the stuff that he's been saying and doing some political answers and everything of the sort. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's important to consider one thing. You bring up the abortion issue, and we'll go there. With him, is he brought up correctly that Ronald Reagan has the same position he has, which is about the exceptions. So rape, incest, the life of the mother. And here's the thing that's the question is an important one. And I think probably I know I would agree with you on this. To me, if you're going to say Trump, your answer on abortion is unacceptable, you're also saying that about President Reagan.
Yeah.
And Reagan is the darling of conservatives, and so I think you can effectively declare the Reagan Revolution over.
Yeah.
Because what's interesting, I remember talking to an old teacher in 2016, was a lot of the candidates, although I don't think Trump really did this, were trying to show they were the next Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
And Trump really didn't. He was all about winning and all about fighting and all about, we're going to make America great again.
Just right is right.
Yeah. And the thing is, I will say I don't agree that he's afraid of DeSantis and that's why he's not going to the debates. I think probably if we're going to go on it, you mentioned his record.
Yeah.
I would say probably he's got an advisor, because what do we know about Trump? And this is actually
he definitely has an advisor.
This is a bone to pick with Trump. It is.
Yeah.
Is he listens to bad advisors.
Chris Christie.
And, he had him as an advisor for a while, yeah. But, so it's not him now, obviously.
Yeah.
But anyway.
You idiot.
Yeah. And so the thing is, there's probably an advisor saying, sir, you don't need to. Sir, if you don't go, hardly anyone's going to watch it. And that's just not true.
And that dude should be fired.
Yes.
Now. You don't... I mean, you can lose something, but you're Trump. You're not going to lose unless... I don't know. That advisor could be the smartest person in the world or the dumbest person in the world, in my opinion, because you are still giving one of your strongest opponents that you've ever faced, because let's face it, Hillary Clinton was not a strong opponent, and let's face it, neither was Joe Biden.
Of course.
You are giving one of your strongest opponents the chance to just throw as many touchdown passes as possible.
Sure.
You're not even going to play defense. You're not going to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Just go ahead, throw the touchdowns. We'll give you this game, and we'll go hopefully win the Super Bowl, hopefully,
Well,
but one game can be a difference.
it can be. I would say something to kind of consider about 2016 is he did not go in all the debates in 2016, but I hasten to add, this is the difference. So everyone remembers the first debate that was moderated by Megyn Kelly, and she asked some stupid setup questions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then later on, she was moderating other debates, and he chose to not go to one because she was moderating. He expressed, look, she's not a impartial moderator.
She's bad.
I don't think this is good.
Yeah.
You should not have her moderate. And they said, we don't care. We're doing it anyway. So then he said, well, fine, I'm foregoing the debate. And he didn't go. They went on to at least a couple of times bring up his name, talk about him.
Yeah.
And he went and had a rally that night, I think.
Yeah.
But then he went to the next one where she was not moderating, and then later she moderated another one, and he did go to that one.
Right.
And it was a little bit kind of funny seeing them face to face again in the sense of on a debate, so her moderating. So here's the thing that I want to point out. Here's the interesting thing. I just pointed it out. He did not go to that debate, but his name was still brought up.
Yeah.
It was still media attention. It was just a different kind of media attention.
I know.
Now,
I'll give you that.
one thing, but that's in 2016. I don't know if that happens in 2024. For example, this debate in August, if he does not show, okay, will his name get brought up? Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Will it be brought up in a way, this is the important thing, will it be brought up in a way that ultimately drives people into the arms of Trump, or will they be allowed, this is what you're saying about touchdown passes, will they be allowed to talk uninterrupted and criticize him all night long? And then a lot of Republicans are like, yeah, that's a problem. And then they leave Trump's support. That has yet to be seen.
You're not there to defend yourself.
Right, exactly.
Except for on Truth Social.
Exactly.
Matters, but not that much.
It's not the same way.
Right.
So I'm with you. I think he should be in every debate, except if there's one he wants to sit out, and even then, there's got to be a purpose.
100%.
That's where I'm at.
And That's what I was gonna say. At least he had a reason for those 2016 debates of like, oh, this lady's impartial. That makes sense. You think somebody's unfair to you and everything, wrong or right, if you truly believe that, yeah, stick to your belief. But from what he posted on True Social, yeah, let them debate for who's going to be my vice president. That's ridiculous. That's a cocky Trump.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, that's not going to win.
He's been cocky before and won.
He's always cocky, but I'm overly confident.
Okay.
Teams
really?
get overly.
He's overly confident all the time.
Yeah, but I'm talking overly confident. He hasn't won this thing yet. DeSantis again, and he hasn't gone against an opponent this strong before.
I'm with you.
So that's the problem. Is like you see this in sports too, where these teams get, oh yeah, we're the best, and they keep winning,
Sure.
But then they face that one team that they've never faced before in their life.
Sure.
And it's like, but they're still cocky. Boom, they get smacked.
Sure.
So I'm just saying, you gotta be careful. I understand politics are not sports. Sure. It's different. But you got to be careful with the overconfidence because even the Bible says pride cometh before a fall. Sure. So,
Sure.
Yeah, just from a biblical standpoint, you got to be careful with it. And I'm talking to all the candidates too.
I think with Trump, there's a few things that he could write on some is with the vaccine, he could try to emphasize, I did not mandate it. And then the counter is DeSantis. And this is, again, where DeSantis would still win on this issue.
Yeah.
DeSantis will say, well, so you didn't mandate it, or I'm sorry, yeah, you didn't mandate it for the country. However, I got legislation passed that made it where you couldn't mandate it in Florida. And so basically, I went on offense. That's what he'll emphasize. I had the better position. And this is what DeSantis could then bring up, is to say, in this situation, the government was not mandating the shot like in Florida, but businesses were trying to, and I stepped in and said,
I fought against businesses.
Right. Yep. I protected the people.
Yep.
And that's where, again, whatever other issues there are, that's one issue where I think DeSantis will take the W and Trump will take the L.
Yep.
On that specific. Now, and again,
he might even lose on the DeSantis might win on the Disney thing too, because Trump's come out and said, I like Disney.
Sure. So that would be interesting.
I like Disney too, but not like that.
Yeah, that would be kind of getting into some nitty gritty, and that might come up. We'll go into what we think is going to come up in the debate in a little bit. But on the abortion thing, I think what Trump should do and will do is emphasize who he appointed, the fact that we can all thank him for Roe v. Wade being overturned.
And just shut up.
And that's probably it. I don't know what else he would say other than he has been asked before, would you, and this may be a debate question, I'm kind of jumping the gun here, would you sign a national ban on abortion? And he has not said no. So there's a possibility that he actually will be malleable enough to do that.
But I don't think he's going to say yes on TV.
No, I don't, because he hasn't in the past. That's true. I think it was the town hall where he was asked that question.
Yeah, he was.
And he kind of said,
he said, I'll leave it up to, he did the little dance around.
Well, he did, in that situation, because that was a national ban, he basically said, we're going to get a lot of good work done. I believe it's an important issue a lot of people are talking about. That's basically what he said. So you're right.
We're going to do a deal that fixed that everybody's happy with.
Yes,
which again is a political answer.
It is, but will it work? And it might, because I think some of the really pro-life people in Trump's camp will say, there you go, he's not saying no. Whereas it depends on what are you going to insist on. Are you going to insist on a literal answer there on stage, or are you okay with not necessarily getting that? However, this is a proven, tested candidate who has given you results beating Trump, because he has.
The problem that I have with it, though, is when you say we're going to get a deal done that everybody is comfortable with, you can't do that with pro-life. You're not going to get a deal that you're not going to get something done that like pro-lifers say, yeah, that's good enough for us, and where pro-choice says, yeah, we're also okay with not up to 9 months.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm with you. I get that, but I don't think he would do that. I don't know why he would make his base mad on purpose.
He said it. I mean, the things he, Trump's proven, things he says, he does.
Okay, well, let's follow this. So let's follow this through to the conclusion. He said, when it comes to guns, I prefer take the guns due process later. Did he follow through on that?
Didn't have time to.
Really? Okay, this is interesting because this is a fundamental disagreement. You think that if he had had a second term right away, that eventually he would have sent people door to door to take our guns?
If there weren't other major stuff, like still the wall and everything else.
Really?
I mean,
so you view Trump
does what he says he's going to do. He's a businessman do what they say they're going to do. I mean, yes, they bluff and stuff like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if it came to it, I think it probably would have taken a third term to do something like that. So I don't think it would have gotten done. But like, let's say theoretically, if he had the chance to,
At the time,
I think he'd at least attempt it.
you think Trump's weak on the Second Amendment?
Yeah, if he says he is, as far as like, yeah, I prefer this. Yes.
That's interesting. See, I don't see that at all. My thing with Trump
But
is...
why do you say that?
Well, I'll go there. My thing with Trump is I view him as kind of like a broken field runner. If he was a football player,
Yeah.
he would not be the quarterback. He would not be a receiver. He would be a broken
100%.
field runner because what does he do? He goes here, then he goes here, then he goes here. But he's nevertheless going downfield.
Yeah.
So he's he's not running back. He's going in a correct direction. Yeah. Overall, he's running in the correct direction. Now, does he do things, for example, like sign a $2.2 trillion bill in 2020 that was wrong? Yes, that is correct. Does he do things, for example, like say today, I will never cut, and he actually said this in 2020 before, this is the State of the Union right before COVID. He said, I will never cut Social Security or Medicare. So does he say stuff like that? Yes. However, with guns, he was not the strongest. He did have the whole bump stock ban thing, but I don't believe he was an anti-gun president at all. That's not what he was on the campaign in 2016. And that's not who he proved himself to be whenever he was president.
He's not... Okay. He's not fully anti-gun, but he's definitely heavy restriction gun. I would go as far to say that. If he had his way, he would heavily restrict.
Other than the bump stock ban, where do you see that borne out in his actions?
I mean, just not based off of action, because he didn't have a lot of opportunity. There was based off of other stuff. But I'm just saying based off of what he said in the past, like you said, as far as his talk and everything towards guns and everything, I don't think he's as strong on the Second Amendment.
Okay.
Not full on banned, but, as reduced as possible. I think, yeah.
So this is a more interesting question. Do you think should he get another term that he would do anything to hurt the Second Amendment?
Not right now, because there's other stuff to fix.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think so either. So
I don't think so either. So I think we're okay.
Yeah.
So
it's a non-point then.
Yeah. So essentially it is. But okay. I mean, just for the talking point of it.
Okay.
Since we were on that.
Sure.
That's yeah.
Okay. So we got that. We've mentioned abortion briefly, and now on the LGBT, this is another one where I think probably DeSantis wins here. Because, although here's the thing, who first started talking about this on the 2024 campaign trail was actually Trump. A series of Rumble videos came out talking about there's children being groomed. I'm going to put legislation in place where if a child is being groomed by a teacher to be, whether gay or lesbian or transgender, that school will lose funding. So you have a direct consequence here. So he starts talking about that. Now, the interesting thing is he starts talking about that. He didn't do that at all in 2017 through 2021. Technically, is when he was in office. Mm-hmm. He didn't do any of that. One thing that he did do, probably the thing that he was strongest on, was when he was in. He did with the military say, you need to know what you are.
Yeah.
If you're a man, you need to know you're a man, and if you're a woman, you need to know you're a woman, and don't say you're the other thing.
No.
So he did do that for the military, and Vivek Ramaswamy will not do that.
Yeah.
He's on record saying he will not.
And I disagree with that.
Well, and to me, there's other issues with Ramaswamy, but he's a non-starter for me. He's a dead duck, so I would not vote for him. So to continue,
never?
No. So, and I'll go into why later if I got to.
No, of course.
So to continue on with DeSantis versus Trump, though, DeSantis, though, consistently has done things to make sure that pride parades were canceled in Florida, so on and so forth. Very famously, one got canceled after DeSantis said children can't be there.
Yep.
So it's like, that's telling.
Which is good. I mean,
it forces them from cover.
Yeah. You can have your stupid parade, you just can't allow kids.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
And then the parade got canceled, and it's forcing the people that are hiding in the shadows to come out.
Yep.
And show what they are.
Show us your true colors.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing. In a way, I think DeSantis could be you can lay that at his feet.
Yeah.
He played that beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
Show who these people are.
Yep.
Trump, the only thing with the trans issue that he really has to his name is the military. And now he is taking up the position because it's a popular position. A lot of Republicans are really, really caring about how their children are treated or not treated in school. And I think Trump is able to read the room enough to see this is more of an issue than I thought, and we need to have something done, especially for kids. So I think actually, when it comes to action, it may be a bit of a tie, but record, DeSantis has more of a record on that issue than Trump has. Fair to say?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And the one thing I will say is I'm concerned that, I've said in the past that the best debate that Trump had against Biden is when they cut off his mic. That was in my opinion the best.
So it would have technically been the third, but it was actually the second because the second one got canceled.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It was technically.
So the second debate I think was the best because Trump was forced to shut up. This is one time I don't want Trump to be quiet, right? Most of the time for Trump, the best thing is to shut up, because just say the smart thing and then don't continue after that, because when you continue, you say something stupid and then you get all this media, which again, media attention is good, but you get just stupid media attention to where the dumb Democrats, some of those Democrats you possibly could have won over, you can't now because you decided to extend on it, But anyway, I've got a feeling that Trump's going to do political answers and also just kind of go quiet on some things. And I'm worried that the trans issue might be a thing. I don't have anything to back that. I'm just saying the Disney thing worries me a little bit. Just knowing what Disney stands for and everything. But again, I don't have anything. It's just a feeling I have just seeing how Trump is kind of changing. So that's something that does concern me. Is that going to be the next thing that changes for Trump, where he starts to kind of go quiet on some issues that, just because he doesn't want to hurt his numbers or anything else. I don't know.
Okay. Before we go to the debates, let me ask you, because you've said this in other episodes of Zoo Nation, what ways has Trump changed?
Trump's changed in the sense of just stances, giving more political answers, just the, for example, the stance on abortion, giving a political, again.
Did he change his position?
It's not the Trump that just comes out and says what he thinks. It's the Trump that says, it was a more reserved Trump.
Okay.
So we are getting a more reserved Trump in a sense. We also have a Trump that, now Trump always doubles down, but we have a Trump that's also going to, if not hasn't started, hurting his own base, where the vax. He hasn't backed away from that. He's got to back away.
So?
He's got to back. He hasn't backed away.
I went to the rally in the state. He didn't mention it at one time.
Okay, but does that mean you're backing away from it? I mean,
arguably, if you're not bringing it up.
Arguably, yes, but
maybe he's able to read the room enough.
The problem, yes, that's true. I'll give you that. Okay, but the problem with that is, if you're just gonna avoid it by not saying it, then you can never go to a debate again, because it's going to it will come up in a debate. COVID will come up in a debate.
Well, it depends on what his answer is.
Well, depending on what his answer is.
Yeah.
But I've just from previous things, just keeping your mouth shut doesn't mean that you haven't changed what you've said, previously, because previously, before he started keeping his mouth shut on it, he was saying, he was still saying the wonderful vaccine, the wonderful things he did on COVID, et cetera, et cetera. He was talking about his record. Now he's not talking about his record as much. So there are some changes in demeanor.
Sure.
So that's kind of the changes I'm talking about, is the changes in demeanor, which do kind of worry me, because when you start to change your demeanor, I question, are you changing your views as well?
Okay.
Or are you just doing this for a strategic thing and you haven't changed a bit? But with Trump, I don't know. So it does kind of concern me. So there's no official, I have the same Ron DeSantis question as far as because they threw out an ad essentially of where the old Donald Trump go. Where'd the guy that was just out there go? He's still on Truth Social and everything, but I don't know. I'm not hearing as much about Trump on social media and everything else as versus 2016 and 2020 was nothing but.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. And some of that I think is due to him being more reserved, which I think could help but also could hurt. I don't know.
How much of that is because he's being censored on Twitter, and it's on Truth Social, and that's not really his fault. It's big tech's fault. That's one thing that I would ask. And the other thing is when Trump showed up in 2016, he was new, he was shocking, he was, a star that suddenly showed up in the sky. And now this guy's been around in the political life for, when you think about it, the 2024 election, I mean, that's not 10 years later, it's 8 years later. So he's been around a while now. And so I guess the point that I'm coming up with is how much of him changing is he's older, and the fact that you're not seeing as much of him on social media is because big tech has banned him.
That didn't stop him from before. I mean,
he wasn't being banned on big tech before.
I mean, he was in 2020.
That wasn't really until the so-called insurrection.
After, but even then, he was still causing an uproar after that.
He was, but he was getting his time on social media. He wasn't being censored yet.
I mean,
he didn't have to make True Social.
I'm talking even after the ban. You still heard a ton about Trump even after the ban, though.
Sure, but now we've got a crowded Republican field, so it's kind of a mixture of factors.
I mean, yes, but at the same point, hasn't he been allowed back on Facebook?
Yes.
He's not accepted it, right?
He is using it a little bit.
Is he? A little bit?
Not much, to your point, but he is using it some.
And so...
it's mainly ads, hey, give money now to my PAC. Yeah, it's not very much like him speaking directly. A lot of it's donations.
Right.
Stuff.
And so and I understand that. You use it how you so choose. And so some of it could be he's also playing it cautiously around big tech, yes. But that's not the Trump that we knew in 2016, in 2020 even. This guy went out and said whatever he wanted. So consequences out the window, for the most part, and on Twitter, he's not fully banned on Twitter, is he?
He's back, but he has not used it.
And now, some of that also, I will say, could be business competition as well. As far as, because, True Social is like a social media rival, essentially, to, those platforms as well. So, of course he wants to use True Social more. But the fact that you're not using Twitter, I mean, I don't trust Elon that much for sure, but I don't think Elon's going to, just, boom, you're gone for the most part, I know that's happened here and there. I understand that. But for the most part, Elon has righted a lot of wrongs. Not all, but a lot. So, again, you should take advantage of what you're being given. And, again, the Trump that we knew, at least the Trump that I knew, I don't know what, I don't know what you think as far as what I'm saying, but at least the Trump that I knew, consequences out the window. I'm going to say what I want to say. And I'm going to say what I think what the American people want to hear. Right now, he's not doing a lot of saying a lot of it, except for on True Social, of course. But, I mean, he's not doing... the Trump I knew would be going and saying that everywhere. Because, again, also, the point is to reach more people. Not everybody's on True Social. Sure. I'm not on True Social. The only reason I know about the stuff is because it pops up sometimes on Instagram with, hey, Trump said this, or you send me this stuff. So I'm not paying attention. Now, if it was on Facebook or if it was on... Well, I'm not on Twitter either. But or X now. But, I'm not on True Social, so I don't know what he's saying a lot, so I don't think it's a smart game to play it quiet like that, even though, social media is against me. Well, they've allowed you back. I don't know. It proves a little bit of reserve in Trump, which some might say is good. I say is a bad thing.
Okay.
Especially with the opponent that you're against, in this case, DeSantis.
When it comes to the debates, I think we should go two directions on this. We should, number one, look at what do we think will be asked, and then we're going to follow up with, okay, what should be asked.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, I think we mentioned abortion earlier. I think abortion will come up. I mean, Roe v. Wade has been overturned. I think that'll come up in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. It may not be the first question. It probably will be like the 10th or 11th or 12th or something. I think there's a good chance. So here, there's two things. I think with this, it's important to keep in mind they're going to be asking about what's relevant. So I think a big thing will be Biden and Biden's economy and probably Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
There's probably going to be, and just corruption, just generally speaking, corruption with China, you name it.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? What do you think? Do you think there's recordings that are saying this? There's going to be some questions about just generally speaking, Bidenomics and also corruption in government. I think there's going to be a healthy amount of that. Another one that I think will come up, although it's probably not going to be right away, but I think it'll be early, will be inflation. That's kind of goes into economics as well, and jobs and inflation and economics. Yeah. Definitely within their immigration, because it's clear to anyone, clear as day, that the border is out of control.
Oh, yeah.
So what's funny is I don't think it would have been brought up in a different political climate, but the fact that it's so bad under Biden and it's the Democrat, it's the opposing side, I think that comes up as well. And I definitely think Ukraine versus Russia. And I think that'll come up.
You don't think the trans issue comes up?
So I wonder about that, because here's the thing. Now, in a fair world, and this will be getting into what we think should be talked about, I don't necessarily think so, and here's the following reason why. Because Fox News and CNN and MSNBC, who host these debates, are not wanting to bring that up. There probably will be some... here's the thing.
Let the Blaze host it.
I wish. I think that if it is brought up, it'll be, this person is very, very harsh on trans issues. Do you agree with them?
Can we put a petition out to let the Blaze host it? Like, oh my gosh.
That would be cool. That would be awesome.
We'd get so much done.
Yeah.
If that was a thing.
Well, and there's a stranglehold with the main, like, RNC and DNC over the moderation of the debates, and so that's a separate issue that should be a central issue. I'm with you on that. Because that's very important. The questions these people are asked and actually holding their feet to the fire is very important. We can go into that with things that they should answer.
Yeah, 100%.
But I think, like I said, I think probably immigration, inflation, and jobs for sure. Biden himself and Hunter, his son, and Ukraine. I think that all gets brought up. I really do.
I don't think Hunter does.
You don't think so? They avoid that? I think it's a tempting target. It's a
tempting target, but for the Republicans, that's more of, you bring that up on the debate stage against Biden.
Okay.
I think Trump, you got more of a chance of Trump coming up than what you will, of course. But
that's another one.
Yeah, I think Trump would be more of a topic than Hunter, just because, of course he's important, don't get me wrong. But he's not your main focus as of right now. Your main focus is, all right, who's the Republican?
Yep. It's probably going to be what you just, I think, hit it on the head there. You may have convinced me. Is it's going to be the current president, and then, okay, the last time we had a Republican, it was this guy, Trump.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? That's probably going to be a healthy amount. Anything you want to add that you think will also be brought up in the debate?
I mean, I think
realistically,
I think I hope that the trans issue gets brought up. I think it will, just because it is such an issue. If we're going based off of just what all the news platforms don't want, then no, it probably won't. But if we're going based off of what the news still has to follow to an extent, just like Trump does and all these candidates do, they still have to go with what the base wants and everything.
Okay.
And the base, for the most part, still, they're concerned at least somewhat or involved somewhat with the LGBT and issues and stuff like that. So I think it's almost got to be brought up, personally. So I'm a little more, it's going to be brought up.
I'll clarify. I think abortion will be brought up. It's just going to be later in the debate.
Yeah.
So I'll put it this way. I think if they bring it up, number one, it'll be, this guy is very transphobic. Do you agree, disagree with that? Seriously, I don't know who the candidate will be. Probably DeSantis. They're probably going to use it to attack DeSantis. And then DeSantis will have an opportunity to say, you know what, I believe that, and here's why. Yeah. And he'll be able to articulate it. And I'll agree with him on that, I'm sure.
100%.
So it'll either be that, or it'll be brought up in an otherwise non-substantive way.
Yeah.
Hey, this teacher was grooming a kid. Are we all for banning that from the classroom? And that's a substantive issue, but that'll be the only question, like one question.
Yeah.
And
just tiptoe around the question.
Yeah. And it'll be one question, and it really should probably be 3 or 4, so that people can actually hear multiple angles on this and really address this, because this is an issue that affects the entire country.
Yeah.
What people allow and will put up with, especially with their kids, but also for society in general. So I think it gets brought up on the fringes, if at all, not in a substantive way. So that I think encapsulates what we think will be talked about. Anything else you want to add?
No. Potentially racial things.
I could see that. That's a good point. That's a good point.
I think it's pretty inevitable that those get brought up, just because they typically get brought up every debate in general. So
that's fair.
That's probably going to get brought up just in general.
Where do you see race relations in the country?
Yeah. I think it's pretty much inevitable, especially if you're going to bring up border.
Sure.
It's just going to segue into that,
Okay.
Or vice versa, racial segues into the border.
Right. And that'll be interesting to see what, if any, Republican basically uses the critical race theory talking points, or if they say we reject that, we're not for that.
Yeah.
Because that may come up too. Critical race theory in the schools might come up. That could, yeah. If anyone's going to side with the left, it's going to be that guy.
Or at this point, Pence.
Haley probably would. Pence might. I don't know where he is on that. Now, to finally get into the important thing, what we want to be brought up. So I just said a bit ago, if the trans issue is brought up, it's going to be on the fringes and not in a substantive way. Substantive questions like, what is a man? What is a woman? Will you say here as a candidate that a man is a biological man and a woman is a biological woman? That's a substantive issue.
Yeah.
And furthermore, how are we going to win the war for the culture of saying we know what men and women are, we know that life exists in culture war issues are huge. Economics is important, but I was telling someone recently on my show, and probably here too, we hardly ever talk about the jobs numbers anymore.
Yeah.
It's almost all abortion and cultural and Christian values. It's all about the culture.
Yeah.
And that needs to be brought up in a substantive way. How will the right win the culture war? And actually win, not, have a passing, sugar rush of a victory, and then it goes away in the next year. So that's huge. I think immigration probably needs to be talked about more than it will be, of not only what you're going to do that Biden's not doing, what are you going to do 10 years from now? It's like what policies will you implement that'll actually affect our country for years?
Yeah.
That's an important issue to bring up. You mentioned guns earlier, I think first. Guns is a big one. Right now, the Supreme Court is being pretty solid on guns.
Yeah.
What will you do to further win the battle that the left is trying to wage against the Second Amendment? How will the right win that, basically?
I think guns might actually come up, though.
I think one that's not going to be brought up unless people force this through and should be talked about is big tech.
Yeah.
We just mentioned censorship of Trump. That's a huge issue. Not just Trump, other people.
Also the vaccine needs to be talked about.
Well, and that's another one that's not going to be brought up, but it definitely should.
And I'm not just talking COVID, because I think COVID will be brought up, but I want to specifically hear about the vaccine.
Yeah, well, and I think COVID.
What are your opinions on the vaccine? I want to know.
I should have gone into what we've talked about. If COVID is brought up, it'll be very, very, also like the trans issue, very passing, very quick. Mm-hmm. You're right. That needs to be talked about in a substantive way a lot. I would love to hear that. And I've already said up front, I think Trump's answers will be kind of vague, and he's not. He'll probably in the end take an L there, and Trump. And,
or he if he doubles down, if he does the Trump thing, he doubles down.
We'll see.
That hurts him.
He either will or he'll be reserved, like you're saying. He'll either double down or he won't, and he's kind of a wild card on that one.
Exactly.
That will be interesting to see. So again, I think DeSantis. I think if Trump does not show up, DeSantis definitely wins because he's the strongest on COVID out of everyone on that stage. And if Trump's on the stage too, that's what I'm saying on that issue.
I think he wins there.
On that issue, you know, and it should be talked about in a substantive way. The vaccine should be talked about. The CDC, Fauci, should be talked about in a substantive way. How will we make sure a con is not pulled on the American people ever again? Something like that.
And then segue that into the FBI.
Now, that's another thing that will not be brought up,
that definitely won't be brought up.
But should be. And candidates have time in their responses to bring things up is the agencies.
I'm hoping that's what DeSantis does. In that free time, I hope DeSantis does because, as I told you, I've heard him talk to Steve Deace, and he brought it up as well.
Couldn't find it.
Oh, you couldn't find it?
Couldn't find
I'll
it.
have to go through it because
It's not in the one you told me that it was in.
it's not.
Mm-mm.
Oh, really?
It's something else. You found it.
Interesting.
You found it
So
somewhere
I
else.
know for a fact I heard him at least bring it again. Didn't go into detail
Okay.
about it, but at least brought it up about the FBI and talking about how he's got a plan how to at least deal with things.
Okay.
He didn't no detail, but I would like to hear more on that from everybody.
Well, it would expose who's down to do that and who's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Christie would be like, "Oh, what are you talking about? They're just doing their job." Probably, and it's probably Haley and probably Pence too.
Right.
Trump will say Schedule F, and it sounds like DeSantis is echoing some of that.
Yeah, and I think he is, and I think he's got some plan behind him. I don't think he's probably as big on it as Trump is, just because he wasn't screwed over.
That's true.
But that's the reason he's not as big on it. He wasn't as screwed over.
True.
But I think it's still an important issue
Oh,
to him.
definitely.
So I think he should probably at least shadow that a little bit of like, hey, this is at least here,
Right.
And then trying to think any other
I think one that I didn't mention earlier that similarly under what will be brought up, again, it'll be like abortion, it'll be down the road, probably toward the end of the debate, will be China. I do think that comes up. Now, what should happen, that needs to be talked about in a substantive way.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about them sending spy balloons over our over our country and all this other stuff?
Yeah, what are you going to do about China? Yeah.
In a substantive way, and I'm realizing I should have added more to the last one. I do think that in the debate, I think what will happen is healthcare will be brought up. I think there needs to be some substance there. What do you think? Are you basically for leaving what Obamacare is still there in place, or are you for a complete repeal? Are you for a private system? Are you for government-run
Not just
healthcare?
that, but our medical system in general.
That's where I'm going with this. You're exactly right. That needs to be addressed in a substantive way. What are you going to do, pro-capitalist or not, to help people that are struggling with getting medication?
Yeah, exactly.
There is a legit debate to be had.
Because that's something that Trump wins on.
Yes.
Because Trump, I mean, at least with insulin and medication in
Yes.
general,
Yes.
prices went way down.
Mhm.
I mean, and yeah, so that is definitely something that Trump wins on.
Yes.
Unless one of these guys also has a plan as well, then they can win on it too.
Insurance, healthcare, and medication prices have got to be addressed.
Yeah.
And will they be? I think there'll be some questions about healthcare. I don't know if they go that specific. They definitely should.
Yeah.
Because that affects regular, everyday Americans. Where they
Yeah.
can work and then their healthcare are huge, huge things
100%.
that need to be talked about. Now, there's a ton of other things that are very important. Culture issues, you name it, of course. But that does need to be addressed in a serious way.
100%.
And I hope that they go there. I hope that they go to, okay, here's my plan, here's what we'll do, and here's how we can get the system in place now repealed because it's so bad. And here's how we change it.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
what needs to be done. And so, other than that, I'm not really sure. I think, again, another one that will get brought up probably in the same vein of maybe China, but definitely Ukraine, is the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan will somehow come up, either in a candidate's answer or in a question. And they'll basically say, what would you do differently, and or sketch some of your foreign policy for us. And that's an important issue. That's something that actually will be brought up that does need to be talked about. That I will say, I'll give the RNC enough credit to say that I think that of what I've sketched out that they will talk about.
Yeah.
Russia and Ukraine is important. I do think that does, because I do think it's going to lead to World War III if it's really not dealt with carefully.
Oh, yeah.
And I think in that same vein, it sketches people's views of foreign policy in general. Do you view us, for example, like a Mike Pence, of us needing to step up and be a leader in the world, or are you more for a non-interventionist foreign policy of we need to have what Thomas Jefferson talked about: peace, commerce, trade with all nations, entangling alliances with none? And that was more of the Jeffersonian plan for the country. Which are you in? And so that's the question. Are we basically going to go more toward a paleo-conservative or a neoconservative foreign policy? And that's a legitimate question to be had.
Yeah.
So I think that covers the debates. We're going to have to put the Democrats in the next episode of Zoo Nation because we're running out of time. Real quick, I want to wrap up with a couple things. When it comes to a platform, we've already talked about good things that the candidates should talk about. Anything else you want to bring up regarding, for example, a platform on social issues, economics, school choice, or family Christian values that you would think your ideal candidate, let's say we don't even name the candidate, just a big question mark for their name. What do they look like? What do they talk about? That in a way that makes sense to you? Who is your ideal candidate, because that's a name.
Yeah.
What is your ideal candidate like?
My ideal candidate brings back up the question, except for kind of rephrases it, don't ask what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. But in this case, don't ask what society can do for you, but ask what you can do for your society.
Okay.
Bring back what actual charity is.
Sure.
Because that's what the Democrats have done. They've destroyed charity, and everything's just like, oh, well, the government takes care of it. That's not charity anymore. Mm-hmm. That's why nobody cares about anybody else. Because, well, my money... Also, churches have fallen as well.
Sure.
But one of the big reasons, without pulling religion into it, is one of the big reasons is, well, why am I going to go give to the community when the government's already going to do it anyway? Or like when the government's already taking out my taxes anyway. Mm-hmm. Which again, it's not charity, and mm-hmm. people start getting bitter towards other people. Oh yeah, look at that guy. He's getting my money anyway. Whatever. So, my ideal candidate would kind of like raise more question, or like, I guess the word for it is be more based on some things. Just raise more questions of let's start asking what you can do for your society or your group and everything. Mm-hmm. What can you do? For example, the black community. Forget what the government can do for you. Mm-hmm. What can you do for your black community? Mm-hmm. Same with the whites, the Hispanics, whatever. Mm-hmm. Every community, even the LGBT. Even though I disagree with it, what can you do for your community?
Rather than, I think another thing in that vein sort of is, don't view America as a place, immigration-wise, where you can just come and leech on welfare.
Yeah.
And that applies to legal and illegal. This is not a nanny state. This is a place where we believe in having freedom, and commerce and building things.
Yeah.
And not taking but building things. Yeah. And creation, not destruction. That is a good framework to have. Mm-hmm. We're not all about handouts. We're about putting into the system, right. And helping the disadvantaged, but doing it in a way that it's actually empowering people to be better, not a handout, a hand up, that kind of thing.
That's kind of where I'm at. Just like you said, I want a candidate that challenges people.
Sure.
not challenges necessarily. I don't want somebody that I do want people to challenge the norms, but I don't want you to challenge it. Well, is trans okay? No, it's not okay. Yeah, but how do you make America better? How do you make your society better? I want that. That's something I want. Somebody that actually challenges your mind and makes you think.
So we need to go to questions to close, but before we go there, you said something earlier, and I was talking about basically the two visions of foreign policy, with either, like Pence said, leading the world in this way, or more to the Jeffersonian peace, commerce, trade with all nations. It seemed that you disagree with the Jeffersonian
because I don't think you can have peace. Okay. There's just... Would you have traded with Nazi Germany?
No.
Okay. I mean, that's just my point. There's no way that I'm trading... I'm stopping trade with... Well, okay, hold on. Before I screw that one up. I'm slowly stopping trade with China because, if you quickly do it, China can say, forget... I mean, they own a lot of us.
Right, I know. That's not what I'm saying. But they're not doing what Hitler did with the Jews.
I mean, that's a difference of kind. Killing. They've got slave labor. They've got a lot of stuff out there that's not, not our values in general.
But why single out China when there's all these other countries?
I'm not just. I was just using China as an example. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm just singling out China because that's the most
Okay.
So yeah, no. I mean, for certain, again, for certain views and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, no, until you stop X, we're done. You're cut off. So yeah.
Okay, you're talking about that in terms of trade.
Yeah.
Are you also talking about that in terms of war?
As far as helping people in war?
Well, so...
Or just in general? Like going to war?
Both what you said. Helping people war and going to war.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to go to China. I mean, I'm not going to go to war against China unless, attacked by them, of course,
Sure.
or like threatened enough to go to war or whatever. But so no, those it would be different in that sense. My take on going to war is I'm not attacking unless attacked. As far as helping, it's one of those things you got to do stuff for us too. Actually holding people accountable of like there's a lot of debts that are still owed to us too, as far as for helping people back in World War II and stuff like that.
Understood.
So it's like I'm willing to help out, but there's like I'm not just sending our fellow patriots out there just to fight. Again, Ukraine. For example, I'm not just because Russia don't like you, you don't like Russia, and it's a civil war. It's not my civil war. We had that 200 plus years ago, yeah. So it's like, no, and sure, some countries kind of helped to an extent, but that was because they were benefiting from it because they were trying to expand in the growing United States at the time anyway.
Sure.
So that's why they helped, is because they were getting something from it. So that's my thing. If I were to get involved with war, unless it was like another, Nazi Germany type scenario, it would be one of those things of, hey, I'm not helping unless there's, something major in it for us. But again, unless under the cases of, another Nazi Germany type thing of like, yeah, there are millions being massacred here, millions of Jews being massacred here for no apparent. It's like, yeah, okay, and all the world has tried to step in. We're the only ones that haven't stepped in. We could actually end this. Okay, yeah, that would be different. I would step in there, of course. But, again, there's exceptions to every rule. But for the most part, that's, my stance on the war part. And then the trade, it's like you got to have some similarities of views and everything for the most part.
So we're out, but we got to have questions to close. So what are our 1 or 2 or 3 questions to close?
I have 2, actually.
Okay, here we go.
And I guess they kind of tie into each other depending on what your answer is for the first one.
Sure.
So the question for the first one is, what's the crisis gonna be before the 2024 election?
The crisis.
Like what's the new COVID?
Similar to that. This may sound really, really far-fetched. Okay. Realistically, I think it's more likely it's another disease of some kind.
I think so.
However, I think there's actually a chance that there's a staged alien invasion. As weird as it sounds, think about how often we've been hearing about it.
I think they're saving that one for the rapture.
That could be. On a serious note, I think that the fact that it's like they're planting a seed in people's head. And I wonder if legitimately it's going to be a false flag when really it's like, for examples, I speculate that some of the things that people see in the sky, for example, are military aircraft that are just unclaimed.
Yeah.
No one comes out and has responsibility. Now, we can go into all that. But I think they may legitimately be, and look, it'll probably be revealed within a day or two. Oh, that wasn't a real alien invasion, but by then it's too late. There's a crackdown in place.
Yep.
That could be it. I think more likely than that, actually, the crisis is going to be, I say that, I kind of began with the disease and then that. I actually do think that the most likely, though, is one of two things. These are, I think, the most likely. Either, oh, look, another attack on our democracy, meaning like some kind of a January 6th type of stuff, with a lot of feds, of course, that's blown up into, our democracy itself is under attack, therefore the Democrats win. Something like that. Therefore, we have to do something to make sure that the MAGA Republicans don't steal. Therefore, we have to, kind of like with COVID, we have to fortify the election. Something like that. That could be that, or it is Russia versus Ukraine, or Russia invades another country. Who knows? And I don't know what the reason will be. I don't know if martial law gets declared. Because then the question becomes, how involved does the United States get? If the United States does say, okay, now we're committing troops, does Russia then follow suit? Does Russia start knocking down U.S. planes?
Yeah.
Does Russia start sending troops, for example, into China, and China starts sending them over on boats to invade the parts of of Hawaii, for example? It depends on how crazy this gets, and then Biden basically, or whoever is actually running the country, says martial law, no election. or an election that's heavily rigged, whatever it is. I think probably World War III is a big factor.
Yeah.
Or so-called false flag, it's an attack by the white supremacist January 6th types, which is, again, heavily influenced by the feds. So I would say one of those two, either a domestic issue or a foreign issue. But to pitch the question back to you, what do you think?
Climate crisis or World War III?
Really?
Yeah.
So we're on the same page with World War III. Climate crisis, I'm interested to hear you nail into that a little bit. Why?
There's been talks of it.
Okay.
They've also, like they've done with COVID, like they did with COVID before COVID actually became a thing. They've ran simulations on what a climate crisis would look like.
I have heard that.
So it's just it's kind of like they're playing into it, and there's a lot of talk about it in general.
Sure.
So I just see that as the next crisis. Now, if they're saving that for how that would really crazily affect 2024, I don't know. So I tend to lean towards more World War III.
The only thing I could think of is if they try and say in-person voting is too dangerous, you have to do it virtually.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they're going to heavily mess with that.
Yeah.
They already heavily mess with some of it, but I would say that would give them a higher likelihood. So I could see that.
Yep.
Because people have been talking, even people like Joe Rogan, who's a little bit of an independent thinker, but he's nevertheless wrong on this issue, that he thinks people should be able to vote from home completely like online, not just like a mail-in ballot, but like actually logging into a phone.
If you could do it legitimately, yes, but
there's so much potential for wrong, and I would wonder if maybe they would push for that. They would say now
that's true.
Now is the time
to save the
push for this.
I could see that would be
I'm not trying to give the WEF ideas.
Yeah, right. The second question is will we be, since you brought up World War III potentially being the next crisis and everything, as well as myself, will we be in war before or after 2024 election?
During. I would say regarding after, it really depends on the candidate we get in there.
Mm-hmm.
If legally or illegally Biden is still in there, very likely, I would say very likely, that at least the war will continue to spiral up.
Do you think war? Let me add to this. Do you think war is inevitable, at least for the U.S.?
No, not in this conflict. I think if we get the right leader in there, then it will calm down. Yeah. I really do. I really think that there's potential, especially if it's the Republican Party, the potential for it ending goes up, especially if it's Trump or DeSantis. I would say that. Because I think it's clear to the world when you look at Trump or DeSantis that these are men that you don't want to trifle with. Yeah. Versus everyone else, I think it's kind of like, well, they might do what they say, they may not.
Screw them. Yeah.
But I think that with those two, that they would say, well, we're going to watch it. I mean, these people might do something to mess our country up. I think I'm just trying to get in Putin's head a little bit. That's what I would think. And Xi Jinping.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think it depends on who we get in there. I don't think it's inevitable. I think it depends on the leader that we have. Now, to specifically nail down on, do you think there will be a war right before, maybe during or after 2024, so then after be 2025? Again, I think it depends on the leadership. And again, it depends on what happens in the meantime. And this actually depends on the debates, too. For example, Ukraine will definitely be brought up a lot more if Russia does something big before the debate, which could literally happen. I mean, it might.
Yeah.
I was telling somebody recently, I think foreign countries probably are going to watch the debate and or do things right before the debate to try to get on the news and try to get people talking about it, and then they're going to watch the responses. Right. I wouldn't be surprised if Putin or Xi or maybe Kim Jong-un is or the Shahs in Iran are going to do something like that, or the Taliban, whatever. They want to watch people's responses and figure out who's malleable, who can we control, who's a puppet and who's not, who's afraid and who's not. That's the other thing, fear. So regarding war, I think it's a foregone conclusion if Biden gets reelected, or if by some stretch he takes a back seat and someone else does come up, which I mean I don't really necessarily see happen. I think they actually are going to go with Joe, as bad as it is. We'll go into that next episode. We'll talk about the Dems. Yeah. But anyway, I think it's a foregone conclusion if the Dems stay in power. We'll just put it that way, taking Biden out of it. If the Dems stay in power, yes. If there are pubs that are not Trump or DeSantis, probably. If it's Trump or DeSantis, I think the likelihood of war goes way down.
Right.
So to pitch the question back to you regarding war, before the election, during or after the election, how likely do you think it is that we'll be in war?
So if the climate crisis isn't the thing that is the hindrance to the 2024 election, I think war is pretty much inevitable. So yeah, I think that we're gonna be in war, and I mean actual war, like and during
like
or
U.S.
before.
troops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before or during the 2024 election.
Okay.
Yeah, because one, that's the only way, in my opinion, to really cement Biden's, next term and everything, and it just gets everybody's focus off of everything.
Could be.
Possibly. But it also possibly gets everybody's focus on things as well as like, hey, all right, who's the guy to focus?
Sure.
And then we see that Biden is not the guy.
Sure.
So, but I personally think that they might try the war tactic and just say, hey, we're in war, guys. Like, we can't afford to elect somebody else. We're in war, So I think that war's kind of inevitable. Honestly, I hope I'm wrong. But I don't know.
Again, I tend to agree with you regarding if leadership does not change. If leadership does change, I think
I'm saying they're not going to give it a chance.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, to your point, Biden is already sending, I think it was like 3,000 troops. Now, he did not send them to Ukraine. He sent them to Europe. The problem is with you sending them to Europe, well, what if they move to Ukraine?
Yeah.
And if they don't, you're still saber rattling at Putin and saying we're sending troops to Europe, even though it's not Ukraine itself. You're still doing things. So, again, it'll be interesting to see, because if you're right, they won't even really be an election, or if there will, it won't really matter, and the Dems are just going to stay in, and the war will just continue. It could be, though, that if it goes badly, for example, that the narrative will flip and people will be like, hey, let's get out of this thing, and then a Trump or DeSantis will get in. And I don't even really necessarily know where DeSantis is on foreign policy. That will probably come out in the debates. Trump, we kind of know because he was in for 4 years, you know. But anyway, good questions, good answers, and I think that's a good place to wrap up. Please follow us, as I said earlier, at zoo_nation_ on Instagram. You can find us ZooNation on Facebook. Find us on social media, t.me/ZooNation on Telegram. My name is Josh.
I'm Nathan.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great evening.